Welcome to 14 going on 41. I'm Arvind, and joining me is my delightful co-host, the world-schooling, Gen Z speaking, ocean-loving, bad at matting, trash-talking, now podcasting, always learning, Kiara Arana.
Hey, Arvind, and well, everyone, welcome to another episode where a curious 14-year-old and an even more curious 41-year-old come together in a podcast where they interview people about the road less traveled. I'm usually really excited for all episodes, but I'm very excited for the themes that we're covering in today's episode. There are actually two. One is travel. Need I say more? We both love travel, Arvind, right? Mm-hmm. And then the second one is actually fashion.
Well, I can totally relate to the travel portion of it. We both love being on the road. The fashion part, however, I have to say, is not exactly my, let's say, strongest suit.
Yeah, is that why you wear the same fit for all of our episodes?
By fit, you mean outfit? Is that a Gen Z word?
Yeah, it is, but it's not our Gen Z word of the day.
Okay, fine. Yeah, so I wear the same fit. Well, in fairness, I change the t-shirt up every time, but I keep the same glasses. I keep the same jacket. It's just simpler that way. You know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it is my motto. And it just keeps things uncomplicated.
Well, our guest today, Martina, she probably does enjoy those complications, from uprooting her life in Europe to starting a brand new sustainable fashion business on an entirely different continent. Her journey has been inspired by travel, fashion, both of which are her passions.
That's true. Actually, I have a really funny story of how I met Martina for the first time. I was absolutely blown away that she just packed her bags and moved to Sri Lanka. And there was more to that story, which I'll probably bring up once we get Martina on.
That sounds like a really big upcycle moment.
Meeting me for the first time or moving to Sri Lanka to start a business?
No, moving to Sri Lanka.
Fair enough. Then I guess upcycle is probably a word I need to learn today. Is that our
Gen Z word of the day?
Okay, upcycle. I've heard of recycle. What is upcycle?
So upcycling is when you take something old or used and transform it into something better, more valuable, or more beautiful than before. And it's like giving something a second life with way more creativity, of course.
Okay.
So I think upcycling is pretty much what Martina is doing. She's weaving in local crafts, sustainability, and new value. And her work is literally about transforming what's there into something new.
Weaving in upcycling. I like how you put in all these nice words in here, Kiara. I think you've done your research and scripting for this episode. Well done. And here, if you'd asked me to guess, I would have thought upcycling is just, going uphill on a cycle on like really core leg day and working those quads like crazy.
Okay, so let's bring in on our guest before this episode really goes downhill with all of your puns.
Okay, I will stop there and we will soon bring in Martina Harvey Capdevila. Or if I've learned anything from our Gen Z word of the day, Kiara, maybe we should call her Martina Harvey No Capdevila, because no cap is a word I learned last week.
No. Anyway, we'll be back with Martina. Today we're joined by a guest who didn't just follow a conventional path. No, she designed one of her own. After years working in the structured world of fashion production, she chose to step away and build something meaningful from the ground up. She's crossed continents, built a life and career in Sri Lanka, stitched sustainability into her work long before it became a trend, and shaped a brand identity rooted in story, heart, and hands-on craft. Founder, designer, creator, Martina Harvey Capdevila. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you so much. Wow, what an introduction. That was great. Thanks.
Now, I was telling Kiara about the first time I met you at a friend's wedding, Martina.
Okay, I was wondering whether this would be brought up.
Well, I did have to take care of some dry cleaning that day after a drink somehow spilled on me. I always wondered, though, and I have to ask since we're on a pod now, is it because you really didn't approve of my fashion choices?
That was not a way to boycott your outfit that day. I thought you looked great. Everyone did. It was, no, it was, I'm not going to blame myself. I'm going to blame the table that everything was on. And I actually just accidentally stood on the leg of it, but there was a lot of weight and stuff balancing on that leg, which I think meant everything went over you and maybe the people around us too. And that was the first night, wasn't it?
That was the first night. And that was a great way to meet. I have since
was.
rechristened the drink you were drinking, which was an espresso martini, as an espresso martina.
Martini. Exactly. Exactly. That's a good way to remember my name. People seem to use it. They don't all have a drink, an espresso martini poured all over them, but the association does stick.
And therefore, it is now, every time I see it, I shall always think espresso martina. So
Great.
Thank you for that story. And thank you for your amazing journey, actually. When we met, we heard about your story and we said we had to get you on here. Kiara and I have done some research. And Kiara, I think you looked up a little bit about Martina and had some questions to kick us off.
Yeah, Martina, you've made some very interesting choices. Apart from not intentionally choosing to ruin Arvind's bad fashion choices, but, you've stopped working with big brands like Zara and Next, and you started your own business on the other side of the world. But before we get there, I am curious. When you were a 14-year-old, did you know that fashion was something you wanted to get into?
Yes, it's something that I'd known for years. And actually, I'd even say before I knew what being a fashion designer meant, I used to say that I wanted to be one. I think it was based on liking clothes and being creative, so liking making things. And I think that linked them both together. So I used to draw pictures of clothes. And can you remember? Oh, well, sorry, Kiara, you maybe won't remember it was a toy that you'd twist the top and the bottom and the shoes, and then you could take a crayon and kind of like trace it, and you could pick an outfit like that.
I've seen that toy. My cousins used to play with that all the time.
I think it's a 90s thing, but actually, I'm surprised this is probably going to be reintroduced next year. Everything seems to be coming back round, right? So anyway,
that is true.
So yeah, that was, I guess, one of the first introductions to it, and just something I was interested in. But it was mainly the creative side.
Was there an inspiration? Was there someone else that worked in fashion? Was there something you'd seen on TV, or just how did that come to you?
No, I don't know. I suppose it's not a job that you get told about, in school when you're a kid. So no, there wasn't really anyone around me. Had I seen it on TV? Perhaps. Maybe I just heard the term fashion designer somewhere and it just stuck for, forever. Here we are.
I'm curious, what is the first thing you actually recall creating or sketching?
I used to make, so I never had Barbies. I had action men when I was a kid.
So did I.
And, well, there you go. But did you make clothes for them?
No.
So I'd use them as my models, I guess. And I'd get fabrics from my gran, from my mum, and make clothes for the action men. But unfortunately for them, or fortunately, a lot of the fabrics I was getting were, like pink silky fabric. So they'd have like pink silky pajamas. Or I had one that was the Little Mermaid's like stretchy fabric. So I've still got them. They're in my cousin's house now. So I've got this action man in like a skin tight Little Mermaid's vest top. And it was, it's quite funny to look back at.
Well, you were ahead of your time, because I've seen a lot of people now trying things like this out. So
Exactly. I think I was, there was no point of like thinking, oh, pink's for girls. Why can't an action man have it? I was a girl playing with action men and there was nothing weird about that. Maybe the making the clothes bit.
I remember trying to make my own Barbie clothes a few years ago when I was younger. That didn't turn out so well. I think I used balloons to create swimsuits for that. It was not.
Wow. That's really ahead of your time. That sounds like really creative, out there, conceptual fashion.
She was hoping it would take flight, but didn't quite work, unfortunately.
No, I think it stuck to them. It was a very bad idea, in fact.
Which is why Kiara is not going into fashion yet. But you, Martina, okay, so from a young age, you were doing this with your Action Man figures. You were drawing in notebooks and things like that. You went
That's
and
right.
studied fashion at some point, didn't you?
I did, yes. So when I chose my A levels, I chose creative ones. So textiles, arts, media studies, and French. And then I went to university in Leicester in the UK, De Montfort University, and I studied fashion design there. Should have been for 3 years, was actually 4 because I failed my first year. I was too busy pouring espresso martinis over people, I think.
I think you were ahead of your time. So people looked at your fashion choices and were like, that's a bit too bold for the 90s.
Right.
That's probably it.
Hold on. It wasn't the 90s. This was the mid-noughties.
Okay, fine. I forget that you're a bit younger or a lot younger than me. But yeah, okay.
Not that
So in the
much. I'm
mid-noughties,
38.
almost there. Once you get to 40 or 41, that's when the midlife crisis kicks in.
Right.
So give it a couple of years. And so, okay, so you went to all this, and then is it true that you worked at like the London Fashion Week when you were starting out? Because I'm thinking you're like Anne Hathaway's character from The Devil Wears Prada, just kind of running around and trying to make something happen on set.
It was a great job. It was through university. My uni showed at Graduate Fashion Week. So the main aim of the final collection that you do is to show at Graduate Fashion Week. Now, I wasn't picked to show at Graduate Fashion Week. So when I received that news, I said, well, if I'm not going to be showing my collection there, I'd like to take part in organizing the backstage, and having that role. So when Graduate Fashion Week happened, the person whose actual paid job it was to do the backstage dressing and management arrived backstage to find me already having organized everything and everyone knowing what they were doing, or most people. So it meant that she offered me an internship with her working backstage at London Fashion Week, doing the dressing. So she had a company. And it's a role that we don't really think about, right? Someone to dress the models backstage.
Yeah.
But it's a role that exists. And especially when they've got 2, 3, or 4 looks, you've got a 45-second turnaround of these models coming back, taking everything off, putting the new one back on, and they've got to be back on there whilst they're having their hair and makeup redone. So that was, I did that, I think, for about 4 or 5 seasons. It wasn't so much Devil Wears Prada, I think.
Okay.
But there was a lot of this kind of, high stress, models in stilettos running around, hair, makeup. They put on a good buffet, I tell you that.
Okay.
Yeah, because you'd get there 3 hours before the show.
And you'd probably have a lot to eat because the models probably aren't eating that much.
Well, exactly. There was a lot. Let's say that there wasn't big fights about the food. There was plenty to go around.
Yeah, I can almost imagine it. It's like 3 minutes to go on ramp. Get it up now. Hair, makeup, clothes. Like it sounds like a fun movie idea, actually.
Exactly. And you can imagine the kind of like person at the front with the clipboard and the earpiece. Go. And like, where's so-and-so? Bring so-and-so. I need hair. Get me the hair. And then they come out, right? And the models, it's like they're gliding on the catwalk, but backstage, everything's going mad. And actually backstage is metal rails and cardboard boxes and the buffet in the corner. So it's not as glam as you then see once it gets onto the catwalk.
Bit like social media these days, right, Kiara?
Well, exactly.
Yeah. There are a lot of social media versus reality videos, and there's a lot of chaos behind the scenes always. But I've never thought about the chaos that happens like behind the scenes of a fashion show, you know?
Yeah, I think there's so many people there and they've all got such different jobs and everyone's priority is to do that job. Right. So hair will push makeup out of the way, but then the photographer needs the shot, but the person that needs the model on the wrong way needs them at the front. There'll be someone there doing the PR. So wanting to talk to people. It's pretty chaotic. Yeah, I think that's a really good example about the Insta versus reality. I think there should be more reality that we see.
Yeah, I think if we release like the unedited version of this podcast, listeners can see the reality of the number of times you had to do a retake with doors banging and wind flowing and construction
Exactly.
in the background. Um, but okay,
It's
so
not a bad thing to show, though, is it? It's reality. I'm just picturing a Vogue fashion shoot, a full spread, and rather than it being on the catwalk, they do it all backstage amidst the chaos.
that is a show
There
I
you
would
go.
probably watch. Yeah. Like I said, I think I might. That sounds more interesting than the actual catwalk because that was
Right.
like, yeah. But yeah, who wants to see a model gliding when you can see all the chaos backstage? So you did this backstage chaos. At some point, we're
Mhm.
going to come to your fork in the road moment because that's what this podcast is all about.
Yeah.
But before we get there, you worked in these cool brands. Kiara mentioned you were at Zara, you were at
Mhm.
Next, you were in Spain, you were in the UK. Zara, by the way, is something like when I was at business school, we learned all these case studies about how Zara was ahead of its time, fast fashion, instead of planning months in advance, got immediate data back from every store, shorter inventory, shorter lead times, quicker
Mhm.
turnarounds. What was that world like to go from, okay, I've worked in fashion, we've worked in this, to actually then working at these big brands that are revolutionizing fashion in some way?
Yeah, it was such a big change because my first job was in London at Central St Martin's, the university, but they have a design studio there. So I was an intern. So that was taking on really small projects. It was a small team. The lead times for the projects would be 6 months. And I went from there to Zara. And I was only 23 when I started. And there really wasn't any intro, to how it worked. I just started and they said, okay, there's a Portuguese supplier in the meeting room. You can go meet him and tell him what designs you need to work on. And I was
Hmm.
like, sorry, what? And I know a lot of jobs are like that. You get thrown in the deep end. But I think here, because of the speed and the speed that everything works at, there
Hmm.
was no time for training. You sink or swim. And like you say, their speed to get the products into the shop is incredibly short. So I was working in the kids department, and we don't necessarily think of kids wear as, fast fashion forward catwalk, but there are
Hmm.
trends and there are things that customers want. And there are also things that customers don't know that they want, but you need to put them in the shop to tell them that they want it, so they buy it. You could design something, go and have a meeting in Barcelona, say, with a design studio, and they manufacture in Turkey, they manufacture in Egypt, for example. And 3 weeks later could be in the shop.
Wow. That's really quick. I would have imagined it took a lot longer from design to actually various prototypes, try out, and then eventually make it to the store. But that I think was the hallmark of Zara, right? Like getting
Exactly.
those.
Yeah. And it's things like having pre-booking fabric, pre-approved fabric. So there's material that's ready to go. It just needs the okay, and off it goes. At head office in La Coruña, in Zara, where Zara is, they've actually got a factory as well. So where our office was, on the other side of the road, there's a huge factory so the designers are actually in touch with the seamstresses that are being making things right over the road.
Oh, that's amazing.
Wow.
So you did Zara, you did Next,
Yes.
you're working
Yes.
with all these brands. You've actually worked in corporate life pretty much in fashion, but with big companies.
Yeah, definitely corporate companies.
And then somewhere along the way, you're like, screw this. I'm going to move to Sri Lanka and set up my own company, Original Source and Supply.
Well, yeah, what happened was I moved to Next in London from Zara, and then I'd only been there 18 months or so, and a job came up in Sri Lanka as product development manager for Next. And I thought, I'll take it, I'll do it. I didn't necessarily have the experience or training because my background was in design. But I did have, experience working in the role and understanding the industry. So that's what made me move to Sri Lanka in the first place. And I worked doing this job, product development manager, for 2 years.
And sorry, I'm
And
going to ask, what made you put your hand up for that job?
I was wanting to travel. And whilst I was working in London, I was doing short trips, but I really wanted to do the kind of 6-month travel plan, the backpacking. It's something I'd never done. I never have done actually now. And this seemed like an opportunity to be in a different country where I could travel from. And I think with the 6-month travel, what I was craving was the experience and exposure. So this was actually a way of having that, but also earning a salary.
And how did people react when you told them, "Oh, I'm moving to Sri Lanka"?
I think because I've always, with my family and then by myself, we've always moved back and forth from Spain to the UK.
Sri Lanka is a slightly longer flight.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. They were quite surprised, actually. But then I think once they came around to the idea, they were like, yeah, that makes sense. And actually, that was so December's going to mark 11 years since I moved there. And it's always been a tourist destination, but it wasn't as popular back then. So it was more luxury travel. So a lot of people's first question was, where is Sri Lanka?
Oh,
So,
wow.
You're going to a faraway place when people are asking you, where is it exactly?
Well, at least growing up in India, you know that Sri Lanka is a neighbor, so you kind of hear it. You know it's there, but I can imagine, like in Europe, people are like, seems exotic, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And so you read next in Sri Lanka, so that's what got you to Sri Lanka in the first place. But then to go like, well, let me figure out what's next.
Oh, right, yeah.
And then
to answer your original question.
And I got a next pun in there, so I'm thrilled about that. Listeners right now are laughing hysterically and rolling off their seats and just getting back on to tune back in. And so how did you go from next to, I want to start my own business in this country I've been in for a couple of years and I'll figure it out?
From the beginning of moving to Sri Lanka and starting the job, I knew that I wanted to do something. And I actually had the name Source and Supply in my head right from the beginning. I just didn't know exactly what it looked like. And I thought Source and Supply was a good name because I could do kidswear, or I could do furniture, or I could do anything, and the name would be relevant. So
you could even get into smuggling, right? Source and supply. You could anything. Yeah, if you wanted to run
on the back burner for another time.
Apollo Escobar operation out of Sri Lanka, source and supply.
Exactly. With the most immaculate branding you've ever seen. It's not a bad idea. So, yeah, I think it was the job that I was doing was so full on and stressful and long hours that it might sound counterproductive, but I liked having a parallel project to kind of funnel creativity into, to separate even though my job was creative, it felt important to have something for myself. So that's where the idea to do a project came from, but actually didn't take shape until 2 years later, once I'd resigned. And the reason I resigned is because I'd, up until that point, always worked in fast fashion. And I think being in Sri Lanka, being in the production side, it made me realize I didn't want to be a part of the fast fashion industry. Now, not because necessarily of horror stories, sometimes these big fashion brands, they have to be more strict with standards, with working conditions. So it wasn't that, but it's more what the industry stands for of, we want this cheap product, throwaway fashion. There's really not what I'd call a negotiation in the price. It's, I want this is what I'm going to pay. If you give it to me, great. If not, I'm going to go to someone else. So that's not a fair interaction. And I don't think it's, it's not. It
just becomes a race to the bottom then, right?
Exactly. So, and then, now brands talk about sustainability a lot more. But if you look at the cost versus the retail price of a product and where that money's going, and it's going to someone's pockets. And if it was more evenly spread, if it was just a fairer industry, I think it's the direction it has to has to change. And unfortunately, fashion is assessed by profit at the end of the day in these corporate, you can have a better collection, but the taste wise is so subjective. How it's being assessed is how much money it's making, and it has to make more and more and more. So prices have to go down and down and down. So that made me decide that it wasn't an industry I wanted to be a part of. But I was fortunate enough to have had the experience there and learning what it was that I wanted to do differently.
You clearly knew this was something which was close enough to the heart, but the practices, etc., didn't align with your value system. And so you went and you founded your own company. And tell us a bit about that for people who don't know, because you talk about sustainability really being at the core of what you're doing, local, handcraft. So just walk us through a little bit of source and supply.
Yeah, I wanted to know how you source the products and how you created the supply chain as well.
Well, original source and supply, it's about sustainability and also transparency. So being open with customers of where the materials are coming from and who's made it. Because I think we all wear clothes most of the time, but we're really detached from, hopefully, we all are in this podcast, just to, for the listeners. But we're really detached from where they came from and who made them. So, for example, Kiara, to answer your question, the fabrics, there's different sources for them, but because there's so much production in Sri Lanka, there's a lot of waste that happens when a factory places an order. They often overorder in case something goes wrong. So if that fabric doesn't get used, it just gets disposed of or sold on. So it's essentially waste. So it's kind of tapping into those sources. Also, if a roll of fabric, each one gets checked. If there's one minor fault in it, the whole roll gets scrapped. So, and it's perfectly good fabric, but it's harder to, in industry, cut around it. So it's easier to just dispose of the lot.
Wow.
We even use pieces. This is so cool. That imagine they've been cut. There's a fault found, and they're selling. You can get your hands on sleeves or bodices, so they've been cut. They're in a pile. They're ready to stitch, and there's been some kind of issue with it, and that whole pile of unsewn sleeves gets sold on or scrapped. So then that's what we can use as material. And we have products such as headbands, scrunchies, purses, which are really quite small. So you don't need big pieces of fabric to make them. So that's what we can use these cut pieces for.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah, it is. When Martina, when you are speaking, I can just hear the passion in your voice. And I'm sure, especially when you were starting up, there was a lot of excitement. But when you're starting from scratch, it's pretty scary, I'm assuming. What was the hardest part for you?
I think the hardest part was not having the backgrounds or studies in business. I think I did business studies. I didn't do GCSE. I don't know. I'd never really done it. So not having that background is quite scary. And you do learn as you go. But I think it would have been helpful to have had that for sure.
I'm also curious. So there's the hard part of actually running the business. There's the other part of you've actually not grown up in Sri Lanka. You're a bit of an outsider, right, to people over there. You've been there now, you said 11 years, but when you started off, it was a few years in. How did you build a sense of belief and community and culture and belonging really to this new place that you were calling home and trying to figure out how you fit in?
I think that having worked and next there for 2 years was crucial, because it's meant that I met a lot of great people. I had a lot of contacts, and also you can't move anywhere and just apply your expectations and beliefs of how things should be done. So that was a really good insight into how to work in Sri Lanka and how things work there. Also, I think any business, you're always going to make lots of mistakes. And if you're moving to a new country and you're learning things, you're always going to make lots of mistakes. But in this case, it was making mistakes on someone else's money. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've made lots of my own mistakes as well and paid for those too. But I think that introduction to a new country and a new culture was, I'm really grateful that I had such great team and people that I was working with at the time.
Amazing. And I guess my final question before we go on to some fun games with you, Martina, is you talk a little bit about this saying, okay, you didn't have the background in traditional business, etc. You've now scaled this business really well over the last few years. It sounds like it's also at an interesting inflection point now where you need to continue to grow and you need to do things like finance and HR and all those things. But what actually draws you to it is the creative aspect of actually designing cool pieces of, clothing, wear, accessories, etc. And all of this is in this brand new country. How do you see the business evolving as you're trying to figure out your creative passions versus the needs of scaling a business and how you take it forward from here?
Right now, like you say, it's quite a crucial point. And what I'm looking at is bringing people in to help me with that, because I like the creativity and I like the hustle as well. I do like the sourcing, the selling, the getting new stockists, the negotiation. But yeah, it's got to a point where I think, it's 9 years now, and I think a bit of strategy would be good. Obviously, there has been strategy, but I'm now at a point that I'm looking for outside help for people that can help me structure it better, so I can spend more time on the bits that I truly enjoy.
Fascinating. And people say culture eats strategy for breakfast. And it sounds like you've done an amazing job with the culture of the team from, what you've talked about, from the ethos that you've built. So I think you can figure out the strategy as long as you've got the most important pieces.
Exactly.
Going.
And the team we've got at the minute is amazing as well. And then that just carries on growing.
Are you saying that because they're going to be listening to this podcast? Because you can say what you want, we can edit it.
No way. They know it too. So good question though.
We didn't have to edit anything. Martina truly loves her team. That's what you wanted us to say, right? Yeah.
Of course.
Amazing. Well, it's an amazing journey so far, Martina. And what you're doing is very, very inspirational to, again, follow your passion, which is fashion, to move to a new country, to work with a team, to build it from ground up, and now think about scaling it further. We're going to go on to ask you a few what-if questions.
Okay.
Which Kiara is going to explain in a second, and then we'll break, right?
Yeah. So we're going to be playing the 14 going on 41 what if game, which is essentially we're going to be asking you what if questions. And then what if something had changed in your life, or what if something turned out differently? And you need to answer based on what you think your life would be like based on these alternate reality situations.
Okay. Sounds good. Bring it.
We are back and we're going to be playing the 14 going on 41 what if game. Kiara, you want to hit Martina with your first question?
Okay. So Martina, what if you had stayed in Europe instead? What do you think your life or even your brand might look like now?
I don't know if I'd have even started the brands, to be honest, because I think there's this belief of, if you start in Europe, I think if you start a company, the first step is take out a loan, and you need to have this background and studies in business. So actually, it just happened so much more organically in Sri Lanka because I had access to the people selling the fabrics, the people stitching, or the people printing cards. So I was able to just start small, make a few and start. So I don't know if I would have started the company. Maybe I'd still be backpacking the world. Maybe I would have started doing that and never stopped. But I wouldn't be staying in hostels anymore.
That's true. At some point you grow out of that, I guess.
100%.
Let's say when you first moved, and you started off with source and supply. What if things didn't work, right? And there's a lot of externalities. There were some shocks in Sri Lanka. What if your supply chain collapsed? What if culturally you found things were not working out well? How do you think you would have reacted, and how would you have felt about your decision to start up?
I think I always think whatever decision you make was the right decision for you at that time. So there's no point regretting it because you did the best you could at that time. I mean, a lot of things have been a real struggle, and there's been so many ups and downs. In Sri Lanka, there was the Easter bombings, then COVID, then an economic crisis. And a lot of times I've thought, what's, what am I doing? And why? So things have threatened to go south for sure. What would I think? I mean, I tried it. I'd done what I thought was best at the time. I do have to say that having worked in industry did give me a good fallback. That was a good security net, right? I have experience. I think it's quite different starting a job, say, straight from university. Not starting a job, starting a business. I think if you've got some industry experience, then that's something that you can fall back on. And for me, that was very important.
Okay, so here's my favorite what if question. What if you could travel back to when you were 14 years old? What advice would you give to your 14-year-old self?
That's a great question. That's a big question. That's quite existential, isn't it? What advice would I give? I think just carry on believing that this is what you want to do. And because I did know I wanted to be a fashion designer. And, there was some pressures from my parents saying, but is that a real job? You should get or do a real degree. So, and like I said, I did art, textiles, French, A-levels, and I'm not sure they were taking that seriously. So I suppose I'd tell myself to, believe in that, and that's what I wanted to do, even if it wasn't, like regular job that you hear of.
That's amazing. And if art, textile, French doesn't scream fashion, I don't know what does, because that is clearly you'd have no other option but to do that. But having that belief at such a young age, I think that is what's really impressive, because most folks, like even actually folks I know who are my age, are trying to figure out what they really want to do with their lives. But you've known somehow innately, and you've actually carved that path, which I think is pretty incredible.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to go back to your business creative aspect conundrum. You're at this inflection point. What if over the next 10 years, you could have one of these two options? Option one is you're in a management only role, right? So you're focused on managing people, but the business scales 5x of what it is today. It's a massive success. And you're really bringing in all these skills that you said you need to acquire and really helping the business grow. Versus you end up in a purely creative role. You design some cool new products that people all over the world are using, but the business doesn't have anywhere close to that level of success, right? It kind of grows not 5x, but maybe 1.5x of what it is today. What if you had to pick one of these two paths? Which would you pick and why?
Option B, please. Next question. No. Yeah, absolutely. It's because it's about doing what you love doing, right? And spending your time doing that. And it's what I was saying before about high street fashion success being measured by monetary value rather than sustainability. So it's the same. It's how do you measure success? Is it the money that you're making, or is it how you're spending your time? All of this said, obviously, with the basics covered, right? If you're running a business and you're running at a loss and you've got salaries to pay, it's stressful. And you're probably not going to enjoy the creative side when you've got that pressure. But seeing as you're talking about growth anyway, just how much of it, I think it's spending your time doing things that you love, or option A, but if someone else is doing it, not me.
So, what if you were a 14-year-old in today's day and age and fashion was off the table? What career path or what passions do you think you'd be chasing?
And just to make it fun, maybe I'll also take travel off the table for you, Martina.
Okay, because that would have been my answer. Honestly, I can't imagine being a 14-year-old in this day and age. So well done you, Kiara, number one.
I don't think she had a choice in the matter, but fair enough.
Well, true. But you're doing great.
Thank you.
What would I don't know. I mean, what I'd love to be doing is what you're doing, Kiara. Can that be my answer? I'd like to be world schooled.
Oh, I thought you meant hosting a podcast with me. That's every 14-year-old's dream or nightmare. But anyway, fine line. So sorry, you'd love to be world schooling right now?
I would. I think that would be so fun. Oh, but that actually kind of goes with not taking travel off the table, right? So yeah, I don't know. I suppose I'd like to join as many workshops, extra school activities, things like that I could, because they're the kind of things that I now think, wow, remember when I was at, for example, a uni and there was all these resources available to me. That would be the dream now. And when I was there, I was like, oh, I've got to go to uni today. It's so early. It's 9:00. So actually, I think making the most of having the time and to do things that you enjoy.
I'll give you two things that I think you'd have been really good at, Martina. We've not met a ton of times, but I think you would make a great, like a professional cocktail maker. The way I've seen you mix up the drinks, I think there's some skill there. And the way a certain drink was thrown at me, I think you had a career in sport. You could like really throw things far and hit the right target. So there are a couple there.
Combine the two.
Exactly.
See, just you saying about the cocktail maker, I'm like, great, let's do it. I'm thinking the branding. I'm thinking the menu. How does it look? What are we serving? How does it start? That sounds fun to me.
You really have a very creative mind, Martina.
I love it. And that's my favorite bit, see? And then when I have to think about production, I'm like, oh, really? We have to sell it now? Oh.
Arvind, you were talking about how you think hosting a podcast with is every 14-year-old's dream. I know we're talking about alternate realities here, but not that extreme.
Fair enough. Let's see if we keep this in the edit or not.
I'm kidding. I like hosting a podcast with you.
It's still a few episodes in, Martina. We'll give it more time. Right now, it makes her happy.
and that you got that recorded, so
I do have it recorded. So this is like stored for posterity. But it sounds like you're doing the things that make you happy, which is a great segue to our next game,
the happiness rating game.
Woohoo!
Oh, cool.
Arvind, do you want to go ahead and explain it?
Absolutely. So this, I mentioned midlife crisis before, Martina, but I've been thinking about happiness a lot these days. And we tend to ask guests on the pod, what are the things that are drivers of their happiness? And so to keep it simple, we list out a bunch of factors and you just have to rate them from 1 to 5, how important you think they are to your happiness, right? So 1 is not so important. 5 is really important. Try not to go all 4s and 5s. Try not to go all 1s and 2s. We'll try and get a mix.
But maybe I'm just a really happy person and it's all 4s and 5s. Let's find out.
Let's find out. So we'll find out how important these are to your happiness.
The first one is wealth.
I'm going to say a 3. Shall I elaborate?
Sure.
Because I think it's not about being rich, but like I said, and having loads and loads of money. But the base and the comfort to have everything covered. I know what it's like to not have that. And that's not a happy place to be in when you're worrying about money.
Yeah.
So
no, I think we mentioned it before as well, right? Like even when you answered I don't want the 5x of the business, but you need a certain basic level. But beyond that, so you hit a certain standard and beyond that, you'll chase other things.
Yes.
So let me get into some of those other things. Where does legacy rank for you?
Pretty low. It's a 1. I'm not too bothered about. It's not something I think about particularly. It's not a reason. If you're doing things for your legacy, then there might not be the things that you should be doing, I think.
Fair enough.
In my opinion. What? So 1.
The next one is fame.
1.
You were going to say 0, weren't you, Martina? But you're like,
I was, yes, exactly.
I could see it on your face. It's like, why would I care about fame? It makes sense, right?
Yeah.
I think of these as well. Sometimes I think of fame just like you. And I used to be a sports presenter. So fame at some point mattered to me and it doesn't anymore. But the legacy is sometimes the impact you leave after you're gone. And sometimes maybe that matters a bit, but maybe certain other things matter. And so that's maybe a segue into my next one, which is friendships or connections.
That's a 5. That's super important. I think they're the foundations of what we do, right? And the support as well. So having people, I think doing this business on my own, as starting it on my own, it's a really lonely place to do it from. So having friends and family support makes a huge difference. So maybe that's what the legacy that I do care about. It's the legacy that you leave or give to them.
The next one is health.
Yeah, I'd say that's a 5 as well, right? You can't do one without the other. And a bit like the money, you need that basic health to be able to do what you want to do and do your job, and otherwise, job, but also things that you enjoy. So health is up there. I think we could all, or I'll speak for myself, do more towards the health. But if we're rating it in terms of importance, strong 5.
Fair. Yeah, it's high up there. You may not be acting on it enough today, but yeah, that's what your 40s are for, maybe.
Exactly. Maybe I'll have to jog home now just to.
Fair enough. It's a bit of a long way from Bangkok to Sri Lanka, Martina, but
that's true. Yeah, it'll take a while, but then it hits the travel button too. So
that's true. Which is actually a nice one for my next one, which is fun. Where do you rate that?
Oh, 6. Nah.
I could see that coming.
I'm being quite extreme. So as in 1s and 5s. But yeah, fun's really important. I think fun's when your brain kind of disconnects from the to-do lists and that's where the good things happen, right? Even with the creative ideas, I think it's that fun element that brings the best ideas.
Okay, I have the last one, which is impact or doing meaningful work.
That's also a 5. Is that okay that I'm saying all 1 or 5?
Actually, I think it's incredible because it shows you've got that clarity of thought of these are the things that matter, these are the things that don't. And then there are the only thing that I think you didn't have at a 105 was wealth, which is you'd probably have
in
it
the middle. Yeah.
And that's because once you hit a certain standard, it's a 1, but it's also not so important that not having wealth is an issue as well. So get to a certain standard.
Okay.
So it shows incredible clarity of thought to me.
Okay, I'll take that. Thanks. Impact 5. I think it's having clear values makes business easier. It makes decision making easier because you can use them as a sounding board when making decisions. And, there's a lot of times that it's a lot harder to do that. There's a lot easier solutions to get that. For example, looking for materials that could be imported easily and cheaply, but we always aim to source products locally and from smaller businesses. What does that mean? That there's not as much choice and they're not as readily available. And then there's items, for example, that we have had to import. Then you have to think, okay, but should we stop making a product that is giving people a sustainable alternative because of this one thing that we have to import? Or should we stop making it altogether and then the alternative is a fast fashion product. So this is what I say about not being perfect, but every decision has been considered and it's been balanced about against the impact. So it doesn't come lightly, and this is what I mean, that it does complicate things and makes things harder. But it does mean that we feel better and proud of the product afterwards.
I mean, the fact that you're putting in the thinking is step one, right? And then you're making considered choices, recognizing the trade-offs, because it's never black or white. It's usually all just
exactly
shades of gray or many other colors in fashion, I'm guessing. But
exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wish I could switch some of the thinking off, but if I could switch it off. But yeah, I'm definitely an overthinker. But for this, it works. It works out because it's what we're doing.
Well, like you said, when you switch it off is when you're having fun, which is important. So
exactly,
fun with friends
yes.
while having impact, while maintaining good health sounds like the perfect balance for you, Martina.
That sounds perfect. Yes.
Thank you so much for, hold on, I'm going to try and act like Arvind for a second. Thank you so much for supplying us with this episode, Martina. It's been amazing to listen.
We heard right from the source, Martina. So
I was going to do that one.
Oh, sorry. We can cut it in post and you can do it. But yeah,
no, it's all yours. You can have one each. Thank you so much to both of you. Well, first of all, for creating this, and it's such a good idea, and you're both great to chat to.
Thank you, Martina. And it was incredible chatting with you. And I said this before, but there is clear congruence between your values and the life you're living. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Martina.
And we are back, and it's time for the good old days, Kiara.
Okay, I'm ready for this, but if you start talking about floppy disks, I'm walking.
It's not floppy disk, it's something cooler. So let's cue the music. In the good old days. Today, I'm taking you back to a time when almost every home had a sewing machine that could last decades. Do you know what a sewing machine is, Kiara?
I think so. But do you mean to say that every person made their own clothes?
Well, good. I'm glad you thought clothes, because some people think a sewing machine is just a highly litigious attorney like Harvey Specter. But no, most people actually used to make their own clothes, whether it was fixing a hem, patching a knee, sewing a full outfit. That was actually considered normal. And one of the brands that dominated the scene was called Singer. They were huge in Europe and the US, but tying back to Martina today, they had a massive presence in Sri Lanka.
So I think I've actually heard of the brand Singer, but I'm not sure.
Okay, well, they were pretty famous. They were everywhere, homes, tailor shops, schools, classrooms even. And the reason I knew about them because they actually used to sponsor the Sri Lankan cricket team. So you'd see their brand everywhere. And, back then you didn't have to wait for fashion. You just made it yourself.
That's wild. I mean, now people can barely even sew a button.
That's right. Which is also, I think, what makes what Martina's doing kind of cool, because she's talked about sustainability. She talked about bringing back handcraft and bringing out the actual essence of fashion and the do-it-yourself element, which is really cool. And she said a lot, Kiara. What did you take away from today's episode?
So I think what really I took away from the whole episode is she's so clear about her priorities. You go back to when she was around my age, even back then, she knew she wanted to be a fashion designer. We ask a lot of people, when you were 14, what do you think you're doing? And she always knew fashion designer. So that was really interesting. And, she talked about how she worked in Zara and she worked at Next. She learned a lot from those experiences. But at the end of the day, she knew her priorities. She knew she didn't want to be in fast fashion. And then she's left and she started her own business. And this came across even in the happiness rating game with the ones and the fives. She was clear about what she wanted to do and what her priorities are.
Yeah, I think that clarity was definitely something I took away. I was actually really impressed with her courage to take on different endeavors at points. She talked about how, even with college, when she didn't make it London Fashion Week, she said, "Oh, I still want to figure out a way to work on the show." And she found a way to impress people on it and make her mark. Likewise, when she wanted to figure out what to do with her life, when she realized fast fashion wasn't her thing, she went and started up something of her own that aligned with her principle. And so just an incredible amount of courage to take those paths, even when things may not go your way, and maintain a positive attitude about it and be excited about it. So I thought that was really cool.
So in this episode, we had courage, we had clarity, and we had Miss Capdevila. But I'm afraid that's all for today, and we'll see you next time. Until then, drive safe on the road less traveled.
Peace out, party people.